caught my husband cheating with my sister, I divorced him, and cut off my toxic family. Years later, they begged for my kidney to save her. So I told them to F off and walked away. I'm Lisa, a 30-year-old woman, and I'd been married to my husband, Alex, 32, for 6 years. Our relationship seemed strong. We had the usual ups and downs that any marriage does, but I thought we had grown together through those tough moments. He was my best friend, the person I had planned my entire life with, and I truly believed we had a solid foundation. Everything was fine, or so I thought. Then my sister Mia, 28, came back into town. Mia had been living in Florida for the last decade. After finishing high school, she moved away for college and never really looked back. Mia had always been the star of the family. Our mother, Evelyn, had spoiled her from the moment she was born, while my father, Mark, stood quietly in the background, supporting whatever decisions our mother made. Growing up, it became clear to me that Mia could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. I, on the other hand, felt like the afterthought, always competing for scraps of attention. Mia had it all handed to her on a silver platter. Whether it was the nearly new Mitsubishi Eclipse she got when she turned 16, while I had to make do with an old Dodge Neon, or the countless hours and thousands of dollars my parents spent on her dance practices, costumes, and competitions. Meanwhile, if I even asked for $50 to attend a volleyball camp, I was treated as though I was making the most ridiculous request. The favoritism was blatant, and while it stung, I learned to live with it. After all, what else could I do? My mom adored Mia, and my dad always agreed with her, no matter what. When Mia left for Florida, I wasn't exactly sad to see her go. To be honest, it felt like a relief. I no longer had to deal with her constant presence, and I could focus on building my own life. We weren't close, and for years I barely saw her. She'd come back home for Christmas, maybe stay for a few days, but we didn't talk much, and that was just fine with me. Our lives were separate, and I preferred it that way. But 8 months ago, everything changed. Mia came back to town, heartbroken and devastated after her long-term boyfriend had dumped her. According to Mia, he had been cheating on her, with men. Now, I didn't know him well. I had only met him a couple of times when Mia brought him home for Christmas, and we visited them once on a vacation 3 years ago. But something about her story didn't sit right with me. He didn't seem like the kind of guy who would live a double life, but I couldn't verify anything because when I tried reaching out to him, I found I was blocked. Whatever had happened between them, Mia returned home, and as usual, my parents welcomed her with open arms. Mia moved back in with my parents, and it didn't take long for the drama to start. She had trouble finding a job, and I felt bad for her. Despite our history, I didn't want to see her struggle. So I suggested that maybe Alex, who worked in a higher-up position at his company, could help. He had some pull and could get her a job in her field. He did, and Mia was able to start fresh with a new job. And I thought that might help her get back on her feet. I was trying to be the supportive sister, even though we had never been close. But then things started getting strange. Mia began spending more and more time at our house. At first, I thought she was trying to reconnect with me, maybe build a relationship that we never really had. I was cautiously optimistic that things might be different this time, but soon I noticed that her visits weren't about me at all. They were about Alex. They talked for hours, had inside jokes that I wasn't a part of, and whenever I tried to join the conversation, they'd brush me off with, "Oh, it's just a work thing." It hurt, but I told myself not to overreact. They worked together after all, and maybe they were just bonding over their shared projects. But as the weeks passed, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. The first real red flag came when I started noticing that Mia was at our house more often than I was. Alex and I had different work schedules. He worked 8 to 4:30, while I worked 10 to 7. When I'd come home from work, Mia would already be there, sitting in our living room, talking to Alex like she lived there. When I asked why she was there so often, they both gave me the same excuse. We were just working on something for the office. It became a pattern, and I started feeling more and more uneasy. Then, about 2 months ago, something happened that I couldn't explain away. Every morning, I make the bed in a specific way. I'm meticulous about it. The open end of the pillowcases always faces the edges of the bed. It's a small habit of mine, but I've done it the same way for years. That evening, after Mia had spent the day at our house, I noticed that 2 of the pillowcases were turned inward, not the way I had left them. It was such a small thing, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew something was wrong. I asked Alex if he had been in bed that day, and his reaction was telling. He looked startled, caught off guard. "No, why would I have been in bed?" he stammered. I pointed out the pillowcases, but he shrugged it off, saying I must have made the bed wrong that morning. But I knew better. I had made the bed, and I had made it the way I always do. That night, after Alex fell asleep, I checked his phone and laptop, but there was nothing. No incriminating texts, no suspicious emails, nothing out of the ordinary. But then it hit me. They didn't need to text or email each other because they worked together. They spent hours every day at work. And then Mia was at our house almost every night. They had plenty of time to talk without leaving a trace. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. I didn't have any concrete proof, but all the signs were there. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, that I was overreacting, but the doubt wouldn't go away. 2 weeks ago, everything came crashing down. We were at my parents' house for dinner, and I saw something I couldn't ignore. Alex was walking by, and Mia reached out and lightly grabbed his arm. He stopped, turned toward her, and for a brief moment they touched foreheads. It was such a quick, subtle gesture, but it felt far too intimate for siblings-in-law. When Alex pulled away, he glanced at me with guilt in his eyes, while Mia just smiled at me like nothing had happened. My stomach dropped. I wasn't an idiot. I knew something was going on between them, but I couldn't confront them at my parents' house. I needed to talk to Alex in private. I planned a weekend getaway for the 2 of us, hoping that getting away from home would give me the chance to confront him and get the truth. We had a great Friday night, or at least it seemed great at the time. We went out for drinks, danced, and spent the night together like nothing was wrong. For a brief moment, I convinced myself that maybe I was imagining things, that maybe everything was fine. But the next morning, I couldn't hold it in any longer. As we were getting ready to head out for the day, I turned to him and asked, "Are you having an affair with my sister?" His reaction confirmed everything. His face went pale and tears welled up in his eyes. He nodded slowly, unable to speak. "Yes," he whispered. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My heart shattered into a million pieces. I had been with Alex since I was 21. We had built a life together, and now it was all falling apart because of my own sister. I asked him why. Why would he do this to me? Why would he betray me like this? He said he was sorry, that he hadn't meant for it to happen. He said they just clicked, and that things had escalated quickly. I asked if they had been sleeping together in our bed while I was at work. He couldn't even look at me. He just nodded, confirming my worst fears. I left the hotel immediately with nothing but my purse. I couldn't stand to be near him. I drove home alone, crying the whole way. Alex took an Uber back and tried to apologize again, but I couldn't even look at him. He packed a bag and left for a hotel that night. The next day, I went to my parents' house and told them everything. But to my shock, they already knew. They didn't even seem surprised. My mom said they were sorry for what had happened, but they didn't seem to understand the depth of my pain. Apparently, Mia had left the night before and hadn't come back. I assumed she had gone straight to Alex. Over the next few months, our divorce moved quickly. Alex and I barely spoke, only communicating through our lawyers. At first, he offered to give me the house and our savings, likely out of guilt. But a few days later, he changed his mind and demanded we split everything. I knew Mia was behind that. I had already moved the savings into my own account, so there wasn't much to fight over. Just like that, 9 years of my life were erased. Mia, of course, was ruthless throughout the entire process. A few days after everything came out, she posted a selfie of her and Alex on Facebook, with him kissing her cheek. The caption read, "Feeling loved." I was disgusted. I immediately deleted my account and blocked her on everything. My parents weren't much better. At first, they acted sympathetic, but when I told them I was cutting off contact with Mia and Alex, my mom had the audacity to say, "Mia deserves to be happy too. You'll find someone else, and we can all move on." I couldn't believe it. My dad, as usual, just sat there in silence, agreeing with whatever my mom said. I went no contact with all of them. I sold the house and moved out of state, not telling anyone where I was going. I was done with that part of my life. I wish them all nothing but the worst. Update. It's been 4 years since I left my old life behind, and a lot has changed. I moved to Minnesota, started over, and I'm engaged to a wonderful man named David. He's 37 and a chef who owns a restaurant with his twin brother Ethan. Meeting David was like a breath of fresh air. It wasn't easy to trust someone again after what I'd been through, but David is kind, loving, and everything I could have ever hoped for in a partner. But, of course, the drama from my past wasn't over yet. About 9 months after I cut off my family, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Mia and Alex were getting married. Attached to the invitation was a letter from my parents, urging me to forgive and move on. They even claimed that Mia wanted me to be a bridesmaid, just like she had been for me. The sheer audacity was unbelievable. I never responded, and I cut off the extended family members who had clearly given them my address. I thought that would be the end of it. But recently, things took an even more surprising turn. Alex showed up at my apartment. He looked polished, like he had dressed up for the occasion. When I opened the door, he gave me a sheepish smile and said he wanted to talk. "What do you want?" I asked, not in the mood for whatever he had come to say. He told me he was sorry for everything that happened and that he and Mia were getting divorced. Apparently, Mia had been cheating on him throughout their entire marriage with at least 2 different men. He claimed he didn't expect me to take him back, but he thought we should talk and get closure. I stared at him in disbelief. "You're serious? You really think I'm going to give you closure after everything you did?" I asked. He nodded, looking hopeful. I shook my head and said, "No, you get no closure. You made your bed with Mia, and now you can lie in it. Did you really think she'd stop cheating just because you married her? You're even more pathetic than I thought." I shut the door in his face and called my landlady, who had become a good friend over the years. She sent her nephews to escort Alex off the property and warned him that if he came back, the police would be called. I thought that would be the last of him, but the next day, Alex showed up at David's restaurant while I was there. He walked right up to my table, uninvited. David noticed immediately and came over. Alex tried to shake David's hand, but David ignored it and asked me, "Do you want me to kick him out?" "Not yet," I replied. I had questions. "What happened between you and Mia?" I asked Alex. He sighed and told me about her affairs, how she had been seeing married men for most of their marriage. He had stayed with her for nearly a year, quietly stashing away money and selling off assets, so she wouldn't get much in the divorce. "And now she's back living with my parents, right?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, she had no other choice." I smiled, satisfied. "Good. That's all I needed to know. You can go now." David stood up, towering over Alex, and pointed to the door. "You heard her. Out." Alex tried to protest, but I cut him off. No forgiveness, no closure. I just wanted to know that Mia is back living with our parents like the failure she is. Now leave. He glanced around, realizing that David's staff was watching, and quickly tucked his tail between his legs and walked out. I haven't seen or heard from him since, and I hope it stays that way. Final update. Years have passed, and my life couldn't be better. I'm now 41 and a mother of 2 beautiful boys. David and I are married, and we've opened a second restaurant that's thriving. Life is good, and I've finally found peace. But, of course, my old family wasn't done trying to worm their way back into my life. It started with my mom sending messages, begging to meet her grandchildren, and asking for forgiveness. I ignored most of her attempts, but when she insinuated that my kids were her grandchildren, I lost it. I replied, "You have no grandchildren. I'm not your daughter, and my children have no relation to you." I blocked her again, hoping that would be the end of it. But then something even more shocking happened. Mia started reaching out to me, begging for a Zoom call. After weeks of her persistence, I finally agreed. I wasn't sure what she wanted, but I had a feeling there was more to it than just an apology. When the call started, it didn't take long for the truth to come out. Mia's kidneys were failing, and she needed a transplant. She and my parents had been trying to reconnect with me because I was the most likely match. I listened as they apologized and pleaded for my help. They begged me to come back, to get tested, and to save Mia's life. My mom even cried, saying, "She's going to die without your help." I looked at them, emotionless, and said, "So, You want me to save the woman who destroyed my marriage? The woman who stole my husband and expected me to forgive her? My mom sobbed. Please, we're begging you. She's your sister. I turned to Mia and said, yes, I'm a match, but I'm not giving you anything. You ruined my life, and now you're going to pay for it with yours. You deserve everything that's happening to you. With that, I ended the call and blocked them all for good. I walked away from that chapter of my life forever, knowing that I had finally gotten my revenge. Now, I'm home with my real family, living the life I deserve. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed our stories and would like to hear more, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you captivating tales and new content every week. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We appreciate every one of you for being a part of our storytelling journey.